Hey Divination, thank you for joining us in this live stream. Today we'll show you how to stack rows on scroll with Divi's sticky options. So if you're a non-elegant themes member, make sure that you check out Divi. I've mentioned a link in the description below where you can go ahead and discover everything for yourself. And without any further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so let's start off by taking a quick look at the outcome and what we'll create within this live stream. So I also want to say hi to everyone on YouTube and Facebook. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave a comment on both those platforms, and I'll be checking regularly just to see if you guys are following along. All right, so let's dive into the tutorial. Now over here, I have a preview of what we'll create. So let me just show you guys first. So as I'm scrolling down, the first row goes below the second row. And the second row goes below the third one, and the third one below the fourth one, and so forth and so on. So this is the kind of effect we're achieving with Divi's sticky options. And this looks great on desktop. You can keep that on smaller screen sizes as well, but we're just going with the normal flow on smaller screen sizes, so we're bringing everything to regular again on tablet and phone because of the viewport heights. But still, you can still use this on smaller screen sizes as well. It just looks more effortless as an experience on desktop. So we'll recreate this using the Divi sticky options. And yeah, let's get to it. So the first thing you will need to do is open a new page you're working on, or create a new one. Over here I have a page, and I'm going to enable the visual builder at the top. All right, so over here I'll start building from scratch. And the first part is, prepping our section. So over here I already have a section. I'm going to open these section settings. And over here in the spacing settings, I'm going to modify the padding values across all screen sizes. So I'm going to start off with 100 pixels for top and bottom on desktop. And I'm going to bring that down to 40 pixels on tablet and 25 pixels on phone. So just to create a little bit of space at the top and the bottom of my section, which you can notice over here. And then I'll add a new row. So we're using, as you can see in the preview, we're using a row with 2 columns. So I'm going to add that here. And we're first going to recreate the first row over here, assign the sticky settings that are necessary for this effect. And then once we have those sticky settings in place, and the design, of course, we can reuse this entire row as many times as we want and have this continuous stacking effect going on because we're reusing the same sticky settings. And yeah, that will just help us, focus on the design once we're done with the first row. So once we have, all of the settings in place, we can focus on improving the design or, just making it different from each other. All right, so over here, before I add any modules, I'm going to open the row settings. And in the sizing settings, I'm going to bring these 2 columns next to each other. So I'll remove all space in between them by enabling use custom gutter width and select 1 over here. And I'm also going to equalize the column heights. This will just give an effortless, balance between both columns. So it will make sure that the height of each column is the same as the other. And over here in the width, I'm going to add 90% and a max width of 2,580 pixels. So this value over here is basically full screen on most desktop screen sizes. At a certain point, it stops going full width, but that's like for the very, very large screen sizes. I'm also going to remove the top and bottom default padding a row contains, just to make sure that we can create that touching effect between rows. As you can see at the bottom, if I were not to remove that bottom and top padding of my row, this wouldn't touch. So it really depends on what you prefer in design, but since we're creating that row stacking effect, it only makes sense to remove all the space between our rows. All right, so now that the general row settings are in place, we can add a background color to the first column. So let me grab that color code real quick. And I'm also going to use a background image. So these image, I'm not sure which layout back they're from. I think it's a beauty products layout back, if I'm correct. I'll just take a quick look. These images that I've been using throughout the design are part of the beauty product layout back, as you can notice over here. If I click on this, all of these assets are available within the layout back. So you're free to use these images for free as well if they fit whatever kind of website you're building. All right, so I'm just gonna grab this background image. You can also find it in the zipped folder, which you were able to download in the blog post. So there's a blog post that explains everything I'm doing within this tutorial step by step. It's mentioned in the description below, and over there you have a download folder with the JSON file, so with the actual design that we're recreating over here, and also the images are included, so these ones, which you are free to use without any restrictions. So I've already uploaded these to my library, and I'm going to select one of them over here as my column 1 background image, and I'm gonna pick fit over here for the background image size, and then I'll go to the spacing settings, and over here we're gonna modify the column padding values across different screen sizes as well. I'm starting with 25% for the top and the bottom padding on desktop, and 5% for the left and the right padding. So this left and right padding is going to remain across all screen sizes, but we're changing the top and bottom padding on smaller screen sizes just to make sure that it doesn't take up too much space on smaller screen sizes where it isn't really necessary. So we'll go for 40% and 50% for, actually, we're just recreating more of a squares kind of design. So, I mean, let me just see how much I'm using here. 25, we could go lower than that. We can go to 20. It really depends on, what you see as fit. So you can create a square out of it or just keep it minimal. Depends on how large you want the background image to be on smaller screen sizes. So that's for the column 1 settings, and then we'll add a background color to the second column as well. So let me just switch over to the preview over here. So we're using a different background color for the second column in the same kind of color range, just a little lighter. And we're also going to add some spacing values over here. So these will be the same across all screen sizes. It's 13% for the top and bottom padding and 8% for the left and the right side. So this will just create some space between the end and beginning of the column and the modules that we'll place inside it. And we're also going to include a box shadow. So we'll just pick the first option over here and we'll modify the vertical position to 20 pixels and the blur strength to 50 pixels. But obviously you're free to, tweak this design however you want. So we're just setting the foundation of our design. If you're more interested in how to create that row stacking effect, in particular for any kind of design you're building, once we're done with the row and the modules inside it, we're going to dedicate some time to that specifically. So those steps that we'll go through will be steps that you'll be able to apply to any kind of design you're creating, so to any kind of row. So we're starting off by laying the foundation of our design, but if you're just looking to add the row stacking effect, that will come in the next part too. All right, so now that the row and column settings are in place, let's start adding modules, starting with a text module in column 1. Over here, I'm going to place some copy of my choice. And then I'll go ahead and make this an H2, and I'll go to the heading text settings over here. And the font that we're using throughout this tutorial is called Alada. It's one of the Google fonts that I really love. I don't know if it's that popular actually. I recently discovered it, and I'm a big fan of it. if you love fonts like Montserrat and Poppins, you'll love Alada for sure. And I'm going to increase the text size, use a white text color. So I'm using 200 pixels for desktop. I'll bring that down to 150 pixels on tablet and 100 pixels on phone. So obviously the text size will depend on how long the copy is that you're entering within the text module itself. So feel free to tweak all of those values according to your needs. And then I'm going to include -1 pixel for the letter spacing as well. And in the advanced tab, as you can notice over here, we're placing this in the top left corner of our column. And to do that, we'll go to the position settings in the advanced tab of our text module. And we're going to use absolute. So this will just remove the space this module is taking up, and it will place it somewhere within the parent element, wherever you want. So over here, it is the top left corner. Let me just go to the sizing settings. Make sure that you remove this 100%, and then it will take an absolute position, as in, you know, the width will be automatically calculated, and it will be placed wherever you want. So in any kind of corner, you can decide for yourself where you want this to be. And there isn't actually any space being taken up by this module. It's placed within the parent container where you want. So that's the reason why we've added some column padding. In one of the previous steps within this tutorial, we need to make sure that there's enough space within the column 1 for the text module to fit, if that makes sense, because it's not taking any space on its own. And we're just going to create a small offset at the top and the left side by adding 2% to both options. All right, and on to the next module, which is a button module. And I see someone on YouTube's commenting, Montserrat and Poppins are specifically fonts I love. And I think most of us do. I think most of us are guilty of using those two fonts a lot. They're really pretty, let's be honest. All right, so I'm gonna start off by changing the copy over here to browse products. This could be whatever you want. And then I'm gonna change the button settings. So these will just be for the sake of creating this particular design. So if you're interested in this entire design, you can follow everything step by step. If you're just interested in the row stacking part, we'll handle that as soon as all the modules are added. We'll dedicate some special attention to the few steps that are needed to make that effect happen on any kind of design you're working on. All right, so over here, I'm gonna change the button text color to white. I'll include a background color as well. Let me just grab the color code. I'll bring the button border width to 0 pixels, so I'm removing it. I'll also remove the border radius here. And I'm using Alada again as my button font. And then in the spacing settings, I'm just going to give it a little bit more space to breathe. 20 pixels for the top padding and for the bottom padding as well. And 50 pixels for the left and the right side. Now, as you can notice in the preview, this is placed in the bottom right corner of our column. So again, we're using an absolute position in the advanced tab. I'm going to go to the position settings, and over here, I'm going to select absolute and place this. So basically you can place this anywhere you want, as long as there's enough space in your column. I'm just going to place it in the bottom right corner. Well, the position settings are actually one of my, most favorite new Divi updates from, I think it was still 2020. I just love it. The position settings are everything. And I don't feel like we're talking about them a lot, but they just help us, visually place anything, anywhere. And yeah, they're definitely worth exploring, especially the absolute position, if you know how to use it properly. And I feel like this tutorial, well, definitely shows you how you can get creative with it and, you know, create a fixed design using the absolute position. All right. Over here in the column, in the second column, I'm going to add a first text module. And this is some H3 that I'll be placing. Then I'll go to the design tab, and in the heading text settings, I'm again going to use a Lada, a bold font weight, a white text color, and I'm going to increase the text size to 40 pixels. Up next, we have a divider module. So basically, you can place anything you want as long as you follow the next part of this tutorial, which applies the sticky options that makes that row stacking effect apply. You can place anything you want within your row. One thing that's probably important to mention is you want to make sure that you kind of have a design that fits within most viewport heights, because it sticks at the top over here. So if this was a design that has, you know, a very a lot of modules or whatever, or just like the height is really high, that will mean that it would exceed, you know, the height, but it will still stick at the top. One thing that you can do to avoid that, if you have a design with more modules and you still want that row stacking effect, you can make sure that the overflow of your row is set to auto or scroll, so people will still be able to scroll within the row container itself, even if you have this kind of row stacking effect. Yeah. I'll just come back to that as soon as I add this divider module. I do want to emphasize it. So over here within the divider module, I'm going to change the line color to this particular color code. This will work great on both dark and lighter background colors. In the sizing settings, I'm going to change the divider weight to 5 pixels, 19 pixels for the width, and a height of 5 pixels as well. And I'm going to add some bottom margin, which is 20%. All right, so I just want to come back to what I just said. If you want to create this kind of design with a row that is higher than, you know, the viewport height you're working with, you can go to the design tab, and in the sizing settings, you can assign a max height, which is going to be 100 VH, which means you're inside your viewport height. Now, as soon as this is reached, if you're placing more modules and stuff like that, as soon as this is reached, something will happen to whatever is inside your container. So it will either be a default overflow, which means that it'll just continue downwards. But you can also change that. So it's the vertical overflow over here that you can change. So visible just means that even though the max height is 100 VH, so 100% of your viewport height, it will just continue outside of the container basically. Then you can also use scroll. The thing with scroll is it automatically creates a sidebar, a scroll bar over here, which you don't really want in your design, right? Unless it's necessary, unless there isn't enough space. So one little trick is setting this to auto. This will detect whether or not it fits, you know, within that height. So whether all of your elements are fitting within 100% viewport height. And if not, it will create a scroll bar. So I hope that made sense. Over here, so let's continue with the modules. I'm gonna add one more module over here. You can place anything you want within the content box. And I'm gonna use Montserrat for my font. I'm going to change the text size to 15 pixels and bring this to 14 pixels on smaller screen sizes. So as soon as I add 14 pixels to tablet, it will be automatically inherited by phone. So I don't need to go to phone and change that to 14 pixels there as well. And I'm also going to assign a text line height of 2 EM. All right, so now that we have the first row in order, we can reuse this. But first, so let me just go to the preview of what we have up until now, so a live preview. So this is what we have up until now. We have one row, and we can reuse this to create that stacking effect and make changes to the design. But first, and this is actually the core of this tutorial, we're gonna make sure that the settings of our row are meant to allow this kind of row stacking effect to take place. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open the row settings, and the first thing you will need to do is go to the position settings over here, and you'll need to change the Z index to 1. So this Z index will just make sure that whatever's coming next comes on top of this row. So this Z index is going to be used for each one of our rows, but since one of them, each time you go lower, so each row is a div, right? So I'm trying to explain this as easy as possible. Each row is a div, and the one that comes after your first div, so if you have 2 rows, the second div, which means the second row, has priority over the first row, which means that there will be an overlap. So the first row will go below the second row, although they both have a Z index of 1. So that way we create this kind of hierarchy where, we have a row stacking effect. So it's really important that you have a Z index of 1 over here. So if you don't have this, it won't work. And then we'll go to these scroll effects, and over here we have the sticky position, and we're gonna stick it to the top. Only on desktop. You can choose if you want to apply this on smaller screen sizes. I personally do not prefer it for smaller screen sizes because, those screen sizes are usually smaller. It's way easier to get overwhelmed with different effects. I feel like on desktop it definitely makes sense and it can elevate any kind of design you're working on. But yeah, feel free. It really depends on what kind of design you're working on too and how complicated it is. All right, so that's not enough. We need to change some settings here as well. So the bottom sticky limit is gonna be the section, which means that as soon as the section is reached, it won't go any further, which is very important because otherwise it would allow the rows to overlap with existing content further down the page, and it will just basically hide all of the other page content. So very important that you set this to section. So the bottom sticky limit should be set to section, and also make sure that you turn off the offset from surrounding sticky elements, which means that if this was set to yes, it would mean that as soon as we scroll down, so this is picking up at the top, it's sticking at the top. But it would also mean that as soon as it hits this, it would also pick up this after the first row because it's taking into account the other sticky elements, and we don't want that. So we want this to behave on its own. We want each and every row to only take responsibility for itself and not bother with what else is sticking on the page. So very important that you set this to no. And now you can reuse it. So these are the 2 crucial steps. Make sure that your Z index is 1 over here, and then go to the scroll effects, apply a sticky position, so stick to top. Make sure that the bottom sticky limit is set to section so it doesn't surpass your section, and make sure that the offset from surrounding sticky elements is set to no, and this will allow you to create a row stacking effect with any kind of design you're working on. So as soon as you apply these 2 things to the rows that are following up on each other, you will create that kind of stacking effect, so which really gives you a lot of freedom on how you can approach it. So let me just clone this. You can already see the row stacking fall into place. So I've just cloned it 3 times, and I'm just gonna refresh this and show you guys the stacking effect. But now we have the same colors going on, so obviously you can see it, but it makes more of a difference when you have different styles going on from different rows. So I'm just gonna make some small changes over here to recreate this exact design. I feel like there are a few things that you need to change: the colors, the bottom background color, over here, the text colors. So some basic things that are mentioned in the post, which is mentioned in the description below. So over there, you can grab all of the color codes. You can basically change this to anything you want. And just grab the correct row. Right? Yeah, I need to change the background image too. So let's just change this, and I'll change the column 2 background color as well. There we go. And also the button background color. I'm going to remove this one over here. I'm just going to show you guys the preview after modifying, the second row over here. So we're changing the colors. Obviously, you'll want to change all of the copy. I don't see much benefit from me doing that over here within this video because they're just, it's just very boring. I don't want to bore you guys. Just changing the colors, changing the copy, changing the images as you go. And then you get this beautiful effect. All right, so I just want to take one more look at the comment section to see if you guys have any questions. Regarding this tutorial, the most important thing to emphasize was the fact that you need 2 things for this row stacking to take place: the Z index, which needs to be 1, and then the sticky row settings, which have some, some custom settings, which are, make sure that it's not taking into account the surrounding sticky elements, and also make sure that the bottom sticky limit is sections. So I don't see any questions, so let's leave it at that. All right, so that was all for this tutorial. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and we hope that you're enjoying this ongoing Divi design initiative where we try to put something extra into your design toolbox each and every week. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.